My name is Dani Lemberger. I recently finished writing a book called LifePower. You can see the cover of the book. I don't want to talk to you about LifePower today. I'd rather talk about another book written by another guy. And the person I'm talking about is Frank Sarge Gerbode. I have never met him. This is the cover of his book. It's called Beyond Psychology and written by Frank. People call him Sarge Gerbode. He's a professor of psychiatry, and his book is interesting for me, for people who are interested in what I'm doing, which is the philosophy of Ron Hubbard. I've never met Sarge Gerbode, and I admit I have not even read his book, but I have spoken to people who know him, who read the book, and who work with Sarge Gerbode. The technique he developed is called TIR, Traumatic Incident Reduction, and he founded an organization that delivers, promotes, teaches this field, Traumatic Incident Reduction, and the organization is called TIRA, Traumatic Incident Reduction Association. Why am I talking to you about Sarge Gerbode and TIRA? Well, what I do is practice and promote and deliver the philosophy of Ron Hubbard, which started with Hubbard's book Dianetics in 1950, evolved into a subject called Scientology, which became an organization called the Church of Scientology, which was taken over, corrupted, destroyed, maybe by an individual called David Miscavige, maybe by others, I don't know. I and my group and my friends, we left the Church of Scientology in 2012, but we continue to practice Hubbard's philosophy, and we do it very successfully in Israel and now with LifePower worldwide. And after I finished writing the book, friends of mine from the US mentioned to me that they did the TIRA course, the Traumatic Incident Reduction course, developed by Frank Gerbode, and this was very interesting for me. And then somebody gave me a copy of the book. I then ordered a copy for myself, and when I opened the contents, the introduction of the book and the table of contents, I said, wow, Gerbode, who wrote the book 30 years ago, read my mind 30 years in advance, and he knew what I was going to write, and he copied my thoughts. So very well done, 30 years in advance copying my thoughts. That's amazing. Because the book I wrote before I even heard of Gerbode's book is in some ways similar to his book. So Sarge Gerbode, his training was first as a psychologist and psychiatrist. He's a doctor. He studied, I think, in England and then in California. And after many years of studying and then working in the field, he writes in the foreword to the book, there's a section, foreword, and he writes about himself and what he did. And he says, then came a 13-year interlude about which I have mixed feelings. These years were spent intensively studying and practicing the techniques of Dianetics and Scientology. And he says, but these 13 years, for all their negative aspects, proved to be a valuable learning experience. Eventually, it became necessary for me to make a clear distinction in my own mind between the organization of the Church of Scientology and the theories and techniques themselves, many of which are quite humanitarian and have very positive effects. So Gerbode encountered the same dilemma or parting of the way as I have found and my friends, and we knew that the philosophy works, and Hubbard was a great man who contributed immensely to mankind And this as opposed to the organization. And I've said, I'm not ashamed to say, that I think Hubbard may have made some mistakes in the organization, but certainly the organization taken over by Miscavige or some other group of individuals has become destructive. It's not a church, it's not Scientology, it's more like a mob. Okay, so he says, Gerbode, once I made this distinction, I made a point in early 1984 of severing all connections to the Scientology organization. So well done, Sarge, you did it in 84. It took me, how many years is it? Many more years, 28 more years, and I left the Scientology organization in 2012 together with my friends, my partners, and we're very happy for doing so. But let's see what he says here. Despite our parting of the ways, and despite the advice of some of my friends, I feel it would be wrong not to acknowledge the wealth of information I found in the Scientology material. So I can also laud and a lot of respect, admiration to Sarge Gerbode for talking about Scientology and Hubbard in the foreword to his book, and maybe it would in some ways damage him, or people would be distracted or disapprove of this, but he still mentions this very clearly. He says, there was 1 year in which Scientology and psychiatry overlapped. During the day, I practiced conventional psychotherapy, and in the evenings, I functioned as a Scientology practitioner, i.e. auditor. So he trained 13 years, he says, as a Scientology auditor, and 1 year he worked during the day as a psychotherapy psychiatrist, and in the evenings as an auditor. I found my work in the evening to be much more effective than the work I did during the day. Wow. The fact forced me to take the Scientology materials seriously. So Sarge Gerbode, doctor of psychiatry, says Scientology auditing is much more effective than conventional psychotherapy. The wealth of practical and theoretical data accumulated through the actions and interactions of this group is extraordinary. He talks about the group of people working with LRH and developing the technology. I spent many years studying it, however, and I feel I have learned the most important parts. And final sentence I will quote from Gerbode's foreword is, many of the ideas presented in this book, Gerbode's book called Beyond Psychology, are inspired by this wealth of Scientology material. This, of course, for me is a sign of, the benefit and the value of Hubbard's work and what we do. And when people occasionally ask me, well, are you a doctor of psychology? What are you guys? Well, here's the answer. Professor Dr. Sarge Gerbode, he gives all credit to Ron Hubbard and to his philosophy and to the practice of auditing. Now, what is the difference between Tira and Gerbode's work, Beyond Psychology, and my book, LifePower? Well, my book, LifePower, and the LifePower Network, is a way of getting people interested in Hubbard's philosophy, getting to know the basics of the philosophy, and then practicing it in what we call auditing, several types, basic techniques of auditing. And then if you like it and you're interested, you can continue going up the bridge. Gerbode's book and his therapy, TIR, alleviates, or he calls it traumatic injury reduction, reduces, alleviates traumas that a person suffers from. What he doesn't tell his audience, the readers, the people that come for therapy, is that they are a spirit. Any therapy that tells you that you're a meat body is misleading you. Man is a spirit, and you have to address the spirit so as to improve man's condition. Because what you suffer from is not what happened to you this lifetime. I'm 66 years old. You, the listener, maybe are 20 years old or 80 years old. In this lifetime, you may have suffered from some traumas, some accidents, some tragedies. You've lost some loved people. You've had some rough times for sure. But these things are, I think, in most cases, light and minor to the very heavy traumas that we've all suffered on our, what we call the whole track, like the many, many years of existence of the spirit going back thousands of years. So over the many lifetimes, earlier lifetimes, most of us have suffered heavier traumas than in this lifetime. So if you don't tell man that he's a spirit, if you don't tell him he's lived before, if you don't have a technique that reduces, erases the traumas from past lives, you're doing nothing for man. And if you don't tell a person he can achieve the state of clear, because there's no doubt, I know for sure, I can prove it, that the state of clear does in fact exist. It's a scientific fact. We've had in LifePower, in our group that I run in Haifa, Israel, called Draw Center, we've made tens, hundreds of clears. We know that the state of clear is an absolute, is definite, is clear cut. It can be achieved by any person, but you have to recognize that man is a spirit, and you have to help him rid himself of the charge, of the traumas, of the millions of years back. So this is what we do in LifePower. This is how we differ from Tira or from psychotherapy or from all the other ologies and isms, therapists and people who can help you. Yes, they can help you because talking to somebody about yourself makes you feel good. Meditation is nice and talking to somebody is good, and there are many techniques. But to achieve a much improved state of beingness, that of clear, where you really are rid of your subconscious, you no longer are haunted by your traumas. To achieve that, you have to recognize man is a spirit and you handle the whole track. This is what we do. And please contact us at LifePower. You can order the book I wrote. LifePower is the name of the book. You can, of course, also read Gerbodi's book. You can compare the books and tell me more about it. You can send us an email. I'm always happy to hear from people. And thank you very much for watching this video. Bye.